And welcome back to the Intrinsic Minds podcast. Gio, my friend, I have real no introduction other than how the hell you doing?
Doing good, getting in touch with the roots,
The
making
roots.
literally the roots.
Oh, your garden?
Yes. A little pun intended, yes, which I'll try to do a little documentation as I go along and stuff, but and like we said, sneak peek into the electric culture stuff and everything, but yeah, it's time for self-sustainability and everything. So um yeah, I'm building a garden.
And it's funny. It's you're actually applying knowledge you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't do
Time
that.
to kick in that earthy Taurian energy and stuff. And yes, I get it. I have a lot of mercurial energy and everything too, but it needs to it needs to apply and transfer over a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we had that talk before. That's it
Mm-hmm.
is your astrological build would be more of the earthy side of things. More practical, this and that, right? I bring that airy, crazy fucking thought energy, right? But like it's even in our nodes. How funny you said roots, right? Your north node, fourth house being roots. You're doing the right thing.
And I started it yesterday, which is April 11th, and Venus moved into Gemini too. So
Ooh, experimentation, uh, trying things out, trying new things, jumping around,
mhm,
right? Yeah.
that's it. That's it. I did all the little short distance traveling to here and there and kind of picking information of what I needed and what I needed to grab and kind of how I needed to kind of plan on things out a little bit and stuff and started practically putting it together.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the electric culture. We definitely have to talk about that on a few episodes, and I would love to get Matt Roski on here. He's everywhere right now, and the fact that you're trying it, I'm a little jealous. I know my aunt does have land for me to try it on, but I'm doing so much at once. But yeah, that is a topic that is so empowering and so eye opening. And I had said this a while ago that this is something corporations and it, anybody in a seat of power doesn't want you to know how to do because you grow your own food. And anybody out there, go check it out, like electroculture. What we're going to talk about it on here, but that's possibly maybe the next topic at hand, or at least soon. And
Mhm.
it does relate because us talking about morphic fields and morphic resonance and all of that, it is energy work. Like if there was an overarching vibe to us in these past few weeks and us starting again, and when we say intrinsic minds, and we're talking about things that are inherently valuable to the self and to your communities and all of that, it's like it's energy work.
Mhm.
Realizing energy isn't just a word. It's thrown out there a
It
lot of
really
the
is.
times. It really is. It's thrown out there, and when you say it, there is a cringy side to it. It's like conspiracy. There's a cringy side to the word itself, but really, they removed the ether from mainstream science a long time ago, within at least the last 100 years, or at least they tried to, and now things like electroculture or morphic resonance, what that's doing is forcing the conventional science into a corner, because what it's showing is that there's a medium that everything works through. And you can't just say, oh, it's dark matter. Oh, it's the air molecules. What are the air molecules in?
Mhm.
Space. What space? What?
It's 2023. We got to talk a little bit, extensively more a little bit on these things. And, people are so, we talked about desensitization, previously in the last episode and stuff. We're desensitized to even just the function of even everyday sciences and stuff and nature and the wonders. And it's like sometimes I feel like we need to be refreshed about how phenomenal and like just interesting it actually is. And we don't talk about that enough and stuff like that. And then as far as like application to things. Uh, uh, we all know that a lot of like the things that we need to do in life are very uh, cliche of what you're told to do, where it's like, oh, well, as soon as the only way you're going to grow is through lessons and stuff like those types of cliches. And it's like, hey, you know what? Like, but we actually have to confront the awkwardness that we internally feel from some of those cliches as that, and actually learn to move past those little bit of awkwardnesses, and actually apply uh, the cliche itself, and actually really deeply rooted into our our sense of self, our sense of self, and actually feel it through to make it mean something. It doesn't mean something other than just the cliche that it is then.
I have a new definition for cliche.
Mm.
Simply said, a cliche is a piece of usually a piece of great advice that no one listens to. So then we call it cliche. Mm-hmm. We don't call it cliche because everybody does it.
And it seems
in another sense, yes, but like in another sense, it's like I feel like the more dominant use of that word is like, oh, it's so cliche. It's like, oh, that means that you don't abide to that. Then, like you're saying, it's so cliche that it's like it's gagging to you in a way.
Yeah.
Which I get, like, and it is a word like cliche. I like to use the word cliche in the sense of like the music industry is very cliche at the moment, or like this now. There's nothing that's. It's like things that are basically obvious, but they're actually true. But I just feel like once someone says, "Oh, that's so cliche," it's like they're giving me that energy that they don't abide to that cliche.
It's dismissive.
It is dismissive.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. At the end of the day, I do agree with what you're saying is that it's like stepping outside the boundaries is vital. It's vital to do at this point. And we can't deny the ether or can't deny certain things. We can only debate or we can only speculate right now, but that's the fun part. Like that fun that we could have is speculate on, wow, like there's just shit we don't know. And now things are starting to come out, like electroculture to me, just like morphic resonance. And by the way, today we're gonna break down some parallels to that and talk about ley lines and how that could be used more in the earthly realm of things. And on top of that, like going into other parallel concepts that basically say the same thing that a scientist is now proving with experiments. So, but oh God, I forgot what I was going to say before that though. What was I going to say?
About the cliches and like the revivification of actually applying cliches.
Ether talking. Oh, and then but like the electroculture, and morphic resonance, these two things right now being a main focus is because these things are showing a new light. Like it's shining a new light onto like, hey, there's more. And there's definitely like, let's say you're making your garden and you use electroculture and you have a copper wire and you use the whole thing that the guy, is teaching, and you yield 300% more than what you would have last year. That's proof. This is, same thing, morphic resonance. The experiments we talked about last week. We talked about the 100th monkey effect and all that. This is proof. It's not, we can't definitively say this is proof of but it's pointing in a direction. And that's like, it's called having a discussion, and it's called being open-minded, and it's called, not being a stingy, whatever, troll scumbag on social media. Right. So like that's where these topics are going to just keep growing upon one another. And, we're eventually, we've talked about this for a while, but we're going to try and cap it off soon and just give as much as we can, more like anecdotal or more conceptual ideas of this. But the overarching story here is we're working with energy. We're working with things and forces that we can't see or that we don't know are there because either we weren't taught or we haven't discovered it yet. Or it was discovered and it was hidden from us. And, the Rockefeller education system just destroyed human brains for about the past 100 years.
Mhm.
So yeah, and that's kind of like I think where we need to kind of go with this one, and then beyond this, if you're getting sick of it, me and Gio were just talking about it. It's like, okay, we've talked about morphic resonance a lot and all that, but if the idea and the concept has sunken in, and if you believe it, I think we can kind of cap it off with today's talk. But we do have some more stuff to give you. I know Gio's been real excited about, and you say Earth, right? You're earthy, and you're doing the garden, but you've been
Yeah.
talking about this ley line thing and holy places for a while now.
Yeah, because I think about the fact that you know, I mean, especially it's funny, like especially ever since Pluto moved into Aquarius and stuff too. Like I have been thinking as far as like what other people's deep interests are about, and how to entertain those things. Not necessarily entertainment factor, but like to hear those things out and actually have a dialogue about those things, but without going too far off the deep end about some of those stuff, like and a lot of those things have to deal with I'm just going to call out a bunch of things that I know for a fact that we're going to discuss and touch up on, but things that everybody has been discussing recently, because I think they're valid things to discuss, but maybe we need to have a little bit of a healthy balance. um Aries, Libra, that energy that we're coming into eventually as well
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
um have a healthy balance in identifying what's actually important, and weighing out the information is the whole AI thing, transhumanism, the currency situation, global powers, war, misinformation, disinformation, mass formation, which obviously we keep going into, and that's going to be a constant for us and everything. But like another thing that a lot of people have been discussing is like all the weird events that constantly occur. And like, yeah, I feel like we kind of had a little bit of a dry spell ever since the train derailment, the shooting, the UAPs in the
Well, thank
sky, the
God.
natural disasters and stuff like that. But that no matter what, we're going to get the same thing that pops up in everybody's awareness, and everybody's going to go up and hoopla about it and stuff. And we're going to get the same rhetoric. And what we talked about in the last episode is the same rhetoric. By the time this episode comes out, I guarantee you that there's going to be some sort of other type of thing that pops off in the global news thing or something like that, local, whatever it may be and stuff. And I just kind of want, if you're listening to this podcast, to like have a little bit of a different approach about those things by now, and understand that yes, we can talk about it. Not like some sides that want to say like, no, you can't talk about it, don't feed it no attention, blah 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 and stuff like that. Like, no, let's talk
No, that
about
yeah,
it.
that's like false love and light shit.
Yeah, we don't do
You got
that
to be
shit here.
aware of it. I mean, and that's if we've ever
Mm-hmm.
come off like and we've really tried to be careful, but
You could never say the
about
right thing anymore.
that and to know that we're not against or that
Mm-hmm.
we're speaking against people's work or their research or their style to an extent, but more so like I would say more that we need more people that are forward thinkers or not just trying, I emphasized this and I'm going to emphasize it again one last time, or maybe not, but is that we need people that aren't just focusing on the narratives or the bad guy chasing us.
Yeah.
And we're trying to, you know, trying to put things under the cart, right? Sweep it under the rug and hide information, or that whole thing on they're 50 years ahead of us, and and it's like, okay, all that fear stuff. It's good to be aware. It's like we learned that millions, thousands, however long we've been here, years ago with surviving, just survival, right? Like we had to build that up. So survival is kind of like, oh, there's a predator and the predator is out to get me. So I have to be aware at all times, but that's fight or flight. Like if you're even in the research realm, if you're researching where's the predator at or what's it trying to plan to get me, then you are in this fight or flight. Why we would say something like mass formation is going to be in the talks and we're going to be constantly bringing this up is because there's an importance to know that, because if we're all connected and you're feeding a frequency out to the collective and all, or to your community or the people that you are connected with energetically and all of that, that you're being shaped by these things and you don't realize it at the time. So if you are constantly going into this stuff and not being, say, more proactive or a forward thinker, or that you're just focusing on the story and the narrative and trying to just figure out who the bad guy is and all of that, then there's going to be no evolution of this. It's just going to be us parroting. And I think that's, if this was a game, we're losing because we're not making offensive moves. We're always on defense. It's always defense. It's always, we need to share this and bring awareness to people. That's fine. And we need that, right? Like, to win a football game, you need defense and you need offense and you need special teams.
Yeah.
But to keep it simple, defense would be, hey, I did my research. Here's the awareness. Here's these dark synchronicities. Here's this. Here's that. The offense would be, hey, there's this new science coming out that groupthink is a real thing and morphic resonance, and that we download our thoughts and that thoughts aren't in the brain, and that's impacting the minds of many, many people. And so the thing like media, or the thing like rituals, or the thing like the government and, psyops and all of that, well, there's a resonance to that. And if we're all focused on that, well, guess what? You're impacting the rest of the people without you realizing, like it's no, like the offense is like using that research. But then you're going, okay, if I'm impacting people, if I believe this is true, if I believe morphic resonance is true, and there's experiments showing that something's happening here with mass formation, hypnosis, all of this, and that there is groupthink. Well, offense would be, okay, if my thoughts are impacting other people and things around me and my emotions, well, then the offense is saying, okay, then don't play into that, what they're trying to play into. It's about knowing the game, like I said last week or 2 weeks ago. You can't go into chess and just start moving pieces around. If part of the game is to develop our consciousness and evolve our awareness into something more useful to empowerment and all of that, well, part of the game is what you're focusing on. If you're just finding bad shit and you're just focusing on that, then you're just playing defense, and then you're actually playing bad defense because you still don't know what play is going to happen. Like, you're still not playing the game knowing the rules or knowing how a playbook would work or anything like that. You're just going, okay, I see that, that the offense that I'm against that's trying to move in on me, I see that there's this many players and that this is a potential and all that, but I don't even know what to tell my side. Like, it's just, I think they're going to do that play, or I think they're doing this play and all of that, but there's no like intelligence to the defense, and that's my thing with it. Right. So by knowing information and then where's the application, that's the offense. You're applying what you've learned to then, if you wanted to say, if we were in a more of a spiritual war and battle, that we know that we are moving forward. I just think that the only bit of sharing the information and bringing things into, the awareness into the listeners and making, the main positive thing is people are making communities from it, and that they're starting to come together and they're saying, oh yeah, but that mass formation thing freaks me out, because if you look into that, and that's more of a science thing, that's not really a spiritual thing. That's like, it is a spiritual thing, but it's in a scientific sphere, right? That scientists and professors and all that are talking about that. Well, then you could get blindsided by your own intent, thinking that you're in this group and we did the research and we see the numbers and we see the Aleister Crowley stuff and all of that. And then that mass formation can kick in and you think that you're going to war with something that you're actually not going to war with, because the war could actually just be, where are we putting our energy? Where are we putting ourselves? Where are we putting our attention, meaning into what kind of attention are we giving each thing, or how much are we oversaturating in a certain area too much? And then we're not being proactive anymore. All we're doing is reiterating our defensive playbook, and it's not that good, because it's not that much is changing. Like, last thing, and I'll let you word in, but if you look at 2015 to 2022 or 3, I mean, even until now, you had a lot of evolution in the awareness of what's the earth. Oh my God, the occult, rituals. It's in the media. There's been an awakening, but now it's going to get to the point where it's like, okay, like how we've done 6 episodes of Morphic Fields. It's like, all right, are they going to, let's talk about something different and all that. Yeah, that's the point, right? Like it's the
Mm,
same thing with any other channel or any other thing. It's like you talk about something for a while, but now at that point, what are you going to do with it? And if you're
mhm.
not going to do anything with it, now okay, move on, turn the page and start trying to discuss and network and get as many people that are trying to make moves with things, opposed to just bring the awareness. Because what is it in the 12-step program, right? Isn't the first thing you admit is you have a problem, the
Yeah.
awareness, right? It's like, okay, let's not stay on step one. Let's let's do other things.
Mhm. And I like how you reverted it to like that offensive, defensive, like sport kind of way stuff too, because it doesn't matter. You could be running the best route that you think is possible, right? And you're on the offensive drive and everything and stuff like that. But there's a blitz. They have a better defensive setup and everything and stuff like that. Like, are you going to sit there and just be like, yeah, but I have the best offensive drive about it. Like, it doesn't matter what the defense is like. No, like it's like you got to have that awareness to be able to be like, hey, you know what? I got to call an audible. Like I need to, we need to kind of switch this up a little bit and stuff. And that's the point that we try to get to, is that it's like, all right, yes, there's plenty of awareness, there's plenty of information out there. Now let's try to kind of get back to basics and understanding of what works, what doesn't work. Let's reroute here. Let's reroute into the sense that it's like we have to get back to that protection part. We're very much so, a lot of the people that listen to this, a lot of the people in these channels and everything and stuff, they're very much aware of what is impending potentially upon them and but upon the masses and everything. But we're not talking about the type of protection that's available, the type of basic protection that's available. And the basic protection, something I mentioned before, is protection, the professional technology that's already incorporated within us. We have that. We have that available. The fine tuning of our own frequencies. The availability to have a discernment and pull away from things or attract to certain things and work towards our sovereignty and sustainability and everything and stuff like that, and not starting off in an extreme way that it's like, I gotta get off the grid, I gotta stop using money, I gotta eat bugs, I gotta fuck it, whatever it may be. No, take a second and just be like, okay, well, how, if I see these things potentially coming, how can I prepare that even if they don't happen, and they say they are just conspiracies, is whatever I'm doing still going to sustain me in a way that's better? Absolutely. And a lot of that is what we're saying, and what we'll move on now into more so the energy understandings again, is when you really do get to go back to basics of understanding energy, you get to understand it in the sense of currents and currency and it just even how it plays out in your real life with emotions and people that you're working with and family members, and even understanding how it comes in with your food source and what you're consuming, and the transference of energy even through sex, relationships, all those things. And we need to, it's polluted. If we come to the awareness, we'll be able to see that a lot of those things are polluted and stuff. And now, what we really crave and what we really need, even though we don't express it sometimes, is that we need to get those things under control and start cleaning those things up. And part of something like we said, like electric cultures, is one of those things and stuff. But what we're saying is, even with understanding something like how the ancients had viewed holy places, and when it comes to the earth grid and ley lines and stuff, well, let's understand maybe more so how that works, because you never know how you may be able to piece yourself into a certain setting that then you start to understand, well, maybe I am playing into uh, more of this setup of this environment. Maybe I am adhering and becoming more like the environment, and that's making me become like the group. And maybe I can point out the toxicity necessarily in the group, but I didn't think I was the group. I didn't think that I was actually in there and stuff. But now I'm starting to see that it's more so something outside the group that's also putting me in that environment. And I think that's what kind of learning more so of even the earth's harmonics and that resonance that happens, and learning the fields in that sort of sense, and morphic resonance even within family is is kind of something that will help you grasp that discernment. And like we just said, like on a basic level, if you just understand energy and transference and all those things, and maybe more so the alternative thought of how does this shit pass back and forth and stuff. So yeah, let's see, like where necessarily would you like to start off with that, maybe?
Well, you did intrigue a few thoughts, and maybe we could build off
Mm,
of this. But
okay.
the idea that energy is being transferred and the awareness of that and knowing the dynamics of this does change the ball game. And so this is why when we go into this stuff and knowing about, like, say, a group affecting you, it's about, because when we're talking about electric culture and we're talking about certain things that are empowering, it's empowering. The mindset here is to empower the individual, not scare the group, right? So, because by empowering the individual about being knowledgeable and not just having a group of people be scared and be on the same frequency of being in fear of an Illuminati or a dark cabal or the Jesuits or anything like that, it's the individuated power that we all need, which would make sense for a transit of Pluto and Aquarius. It's empowering the people. That's what that would, the higher vibrational form of that would be, hey, let's empower each other, right? So if your information is, if it's conspiracy based, there is an empowerment of awareness, but there's no empowerment beyond the being aware of it, because what are you going to go do? Go to the next Met Gala or go to the next Grammys and fucking, what are you going to do? Like,
Mm.
you're going to keep just sharing internet videos, right? And I mean, you could say that about certain things like this, but that's what we're working on. Like, that's what it's time for, right? Like, electroculture, grow your own food, grow it and grow more food, and reharmonize with the earth, learn about grounding, learn about how energy works. And I think really a great segue out of when we have cleaned this whole section up is magnetism, and the magnetism of the human body, how everything has a field. And talking about these fields does connect, like, field theory does connect everything. Magnetism, this ability to, like, generate a magnetic field that you have and build that up, and then tap into the magnetic fields of the earth and plants and every living thing which has a magnetic field. And then that, and it ties in, because the morphic resonance, all that's saying is we live in the same field. We live in the same emotional and intellectual energetic field, and we're kind of connected to this iCloud to each other, and that we influence each other without even realizing it. And when I have used that analogy like 100 times already of the Wi-Fi or the telephone call, where I could just dial, or, I mean, these days you just hit a person's name, but you dial someone's frequency and you have access to that frequency. And it's like, hey, we're on the same call, we're on the same network. And that understanding then empowers you, because you know that there's more things happening. And then when you sit back, like how I sit back and watch a group of people, and at times, of course, I get that strength in numbers, right? Like, that's a thing, but it's also about the awareness of that group and what their intent is. And if that, so strength in numbers, if those numbers are fear or beat the bad guy constantly, you're generating this energy of war and conflict all the time. And it's me emphasizing that oversaturated energy of, like, oh, like, we just got to fight the bad guy. Yet you're creating a pendulum of conflict constantly, because when you create a side, now you've created the polarity of that side. Anything, if you notice, when you look out into any sphere of any type of, you know, whether it's science or religion or whatever, you always notice there's always an opposing force. because once you set down on this opposing side, this one side, you're creating the polarity, and then with that, you're creating having the knowledge of energy. You're going to have the polarity of it, and so it's an awareness thing, but not an awareness thing on what to fear, but what's empowering. And so with today, kind of, I would say probably capping off a lot of the morphic resonance. That's where we let's talk about what's empowering about it, but let's also talk about in almost planting the seeds of what concepts can we go by to keep in mind of this thing, whether you're more of a woo woo person and you want to go more, say, occult and allegorical, or same thing with the pendulum. I mean, the reality transurfing with the pendulums, that's written by a quantum physicist, so he's comes from more of a scientific backing, and has watched how particles work and quantum entanglement, which is basically the same thing too, because quantum entanglement is about how you take a particle and then you somehow link them and bridge them together. And then you could send that other one particle that this one's linked with, and you could send it over to 3,000 miles away. And whatever you do to this particle here, the same thing's happening to the other particle, and this is a scientific thing that's been done over and over again. And so think about it with people and groups, right? When you have this one particle and there's a chord to it, like say me to Geo, or any family, right? There's chords there, and I could go any place in the world, and me as the other particle can be affected by that other one. That's why like moms wake up in the middle of the night and know something happened to their kid, because there's like quantum entanglement, or there's that morphic resonance. So how can then we use this to empower ourselves and apply it to something? And mostly for now, the individual, because I think that's what we all, especially with Aries season, new moon in Aries, where's that individual empowerment?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what makes me think of like wanting to break down more so the mechanisms, maybe, or the functionality of how some of this is working, and especially more so in the sense of things that are in the mind of the public sphere, maybe in the sense that we've just been talking about. So say something like a lot of people get the attention, and even the normies, like the political normies, something that's gotten the attention of them is like, oh, this demonic performance done at the Grammys or something like that, or just some sort of mass tragic event that happens in a certain location and stuff. And a lot of people will, in these communities will talk about the parallels of maybe the names and the gematria and the locations and stuff like that. And what I kind of want to address is maybe necessarily is like, okay, well, yes, that may be very interesting and stuff like that. But when we point out all these synchronicities of what's happening, or even just demonic things, and we're just saying, well, it's them, and they're doing this, and nobody's really even pointing out who they are. They just say the elites.
You notice that like our enemies just they.
Yeah, it's just they. No, pointing out the elites, and like that's just open ended to me. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think you're gonna figure out. You could have a very good, guesstimatory type of idea of who it may be, but like I don't think you're in your lifetime you're gonna really figure out who they are. You're gonna get fall people. You're gonna get people that take the fall for a lot of shit and stuff like that, and that maybe gratify a little bit of what you're saying and stuff, but not really though. And that's why I think it's like, well, all right, well then maybe let's look at the mechanism of some of this shit. So it's like something like that, where let's just say, for example, a performance is done in a certain area, and it has a very demonic-esque type thing, lots of symbolism and all that stuff in a certain area, and somehow it connects to some sort of tragedy in another part of the world. Let's just say, the even like the whole Grammys thing happened. There was the what was that? What was that? The lunar eclipse, I think. And it was squaring Uranus and everything. And then you had yeah, the earthquakes in Syria and Turkey and everything and stuff, right? And everyone wanted to say that that was a ritual. Well, let's just, even if we entertain the fact of that being a ritual, let's take the understanding of being like, was that a consciously done thing by some higher occulted group? And when I say occult, I don't mean the occult is
Occult,
evil. I'm just saying that it was
occulted.
hidden. Yeah, it's an occulted group. It's a occulted group trying to
It's
play on
not
an
the
effect.
occult.
Or is it just something that was kind of organically orchestrated in a sort of sense and therefore had a residual effect on something? Either way, we can kind of look at both of those senses under the same microscope and be like, well, how's that even function? And to me, that's why I'm looking into ley lines. That's why I'm looking into holy places when it comes to morphic resonance and sacred sites and symbology and even eventually, talismans and sigils and stuff like that. And do they actually have that type of effect? But in my findings, I have found, and just as kind of like even points of reference for maybe more so of uh the logistical side of things and the more scientific side of things and more resources. If you want, you could even I think a good thing to check out to kind of branch yourself out from, if you want more information on a lot of this stuff, was this video on YouTube. You go on a megalithomania and stuff, and then it has like, it shows like ancient findings and evidence of like earth grids and stuff like that. And then of course anything that we've said about Rupert Sheldrake, and he has a lot on that on holy places and sites and discusses the morphic field in that context and stuff. But um to me, when it comes to acts done in a specific location or a holy location and stuff, to me is it creates a resonance or like this plugging into a resonant energy that's in that location, and it could be from multiple masses of connection to that area with mind and heart and body and soul, whatever it may be, and developing a memory within that sphere of that magnetic energy, and that very much well be a known point to maybe some of those people that have performed these things and stuff. It may not. It may. That's where I say that's where the more organic side to it comes in. It's like maybe there's a natural pull with our electromagnetical pulses of our own body, our hearts, our structure, that pulls us into those locations to do those things in those locations with whatever frequency we're tapped into and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So that resonance contains a collective field then that it's injected with the human heart fields with various emotions, even prayers, wishes, and intent and stuff. And it also could be very stained with like very traumatic and negative energies of malice, deceit, death, fear, anger, or hate and stuff too. So that's where we're saying where it's not necessarily that it's a good or a bad thing. It depends on the intent. It always is going to depend on the structure of the environment, and so say something like that, right, where everybody gathers at the Grammys or something. I don't know why that's on my mind right now, but it's like everybody
Oh, the ley line placement and the ritual,
yeah, so like everybody gathered
obvious
there
one.
at the Grammys, and everybody of high status and stuff, and everybody who has a very potent effect on the world through cinema, which is a talisman on its own and stuff, and have a way to flash these sigils in front of you and stuff, and you connect certain feelings and emotions and connectivity with characters that these people have played and stuff like that, and artists, whatever it may be, and they all gather in a certain area that's very potent, very energetic, that has a sort of memory and a resonance there, and they perform some sort of fiery type of performance, very distorted, chaotic, and uneasy type of sense, but also very entranced type of thing. Next thing you know, on the other side of the world, something shitty is happening, like massive earthquakes, very distorted, disassembling, chaotic, all that stuff there. So it's like, is there a connection there to that? And we
Well,
could say
don't
something like a ley line, possibly.
right. I was about to say, don't leave that out. That the
Yeah. So
that a lot of that's always connected by a ley line,
mhm,
or a lot of these more mainstream things, especially in the more recent years,
mhm.
like what you're saying with the Grammys. That I think Turkey was on the same ley line as Hollywood
Yes, and
or
they're
LA.
absolutely. If you really look into it and stuff, you can see that it absolutely does. It does connect with the major ley line that goes right through Turkey, because Turkey and Pyramid of Giza area is a major vertex point and everything. But the thing is, though, is my problem with it is the fact that people right want to say that that was intentionally done. I'm not saying that it can't be intentionally done. I'm not saying that it can't be direct energy weapon and stuff like that, or harp technology. Like, I'm not saying that it can't be that. But I'm saying, though, is that we're seeing an effect. Let's kind of evaluate the effect itself and the energetic resonance of it and the possibility in this sense. Because then if we do it and not right away want to try to point a finger at somebody and get hung up on doing things, we could actually get to the matter of fact of like, oh, an effect is actually happening, but how is that effect even functioning and stuff?
Right.
So that's why I'm saying it's like there is a potential where this is awakening things. And then you have certain um well, before I get into that, oh no, yeah, then you have things like archaeoastronomy, right? Where it's the alignment and the orientation of sight to the sun, moon, and stars at certain times of the year. And it's like you got to think like, could it be that there is a morphic field that contains a memory of the light codes projected or reflected by the celestial bodies? Does the veil kind of thin a little bit during these certain times of years to access more potent energy forces during these times of years? Is that what the ancient civilizations were doing with a lot of these sites? Did they understand that, especially because they were so naturally in tuned already, without all the distorted phone, the TV, the this thing, that, and all the superficial bullshit that we're so consumed by? They had room to be tapped into that shit more naturally. Maybe we're the lower forms of consciousness, in this day and age. We're not as advanced as we think we are. I really don't think we are. I'll pause there, though.
And to carry on to that, no, I don't think. I think we have gained physical intelligence, like using the things we can see, or the things that we um, are or not that they're just tangible, but like the things that we know exist in conventional science and more material like items, like what this computer does or what the internet is and all of that. Where yet it seems like the ancients knew how to use the technology of the body, the natural technology more. Like we're using this artificial technology, and that makes us think that we have evolved and that we are very smart, but yet we've downgraded or that we've devolved in the more natural sphere of things, where we've lost, we're only using a certain amount of percentage of our brain, or our third eyes are closed, or many things, like not knowing. I had said this back when we brought up mainly P. Hall. He had a lecture about magnetism and the biofield back in the 60s. Same thing with an author named Valerie Hunt, who talked about bioscalar energy. And the bioscalar energy stuff, all of it is natural technology. So that, to me, that's what the ancients knew how to use, the technology of nature and the earth. And now it seems we have forgotten these things, or they've been suppressed. And where we have evolved is using the artificial or material based human made technology. And that, just because we have this phone and we could go do whatever we want and this and that on here, and we can make phone calls and we can go on the internet, we can do Zoom, and we could do this, we could do that. And we could play games with each other across the whole world. And like, it seems like, oh my God, we have evolved. We have, this and that. But the ancients knew how to use the real technology, real life technology, not man-made, where like that's where, say, the concepts of ley lines and holy places and where things are placed on the grid vortex points, nodes on the earth, morphic resonance, mass formation. All of this stuff seems to be that it seems to me that it was more of a common knowledge to know how it's funny because we call the internet the ethernet. And then if you really break it down, it's like, oh, funny, if the ether, the actual ether, which it is a real thing, in my opinion, the ethernet, things get caught in the net of the ether. As you brought up netter, right? The whole was it Egyptian and all that, right?
Yeah, the Tahuti holding the netter, spreading it across. Tahuti being Hermes, being the communicator, the mercurial aspect, the messenger of the sun god and everything and stuff,
right?
Stretching that cord across.
Right.
Yeah, the Native Americas with Indra's web and all of that stuff too, and everything, and obviously we could get more into that, but there's so much resource that goes into that ancient teaching and everything. It's I feel like our duty is just to kind of synchronize some of that stuff and bring it back into more of this logical understanding of some of the things that right away, like we talked about, hitting us with that dopamine hit and shit, and it's like, wait a minute, let's take what the ancients were saying. Like, I listen, I love those stories. We love stories as humans. It's why we follow religion. It's why we follow tradition. It's why we do these nostalgic fucking things and all the time. And it's not necessarily that bad, but sometimes we get overly consumed by them to the point that when they're challenged or when we have a conflict when it comes to them, we're willing to go at bat to the point where we don't give a fuck about the other person. We don't give a fuck about mankind at a certain point, just to defend our traditions, just to defend our religion, just to defend,
an ideal like
wrong things.
A conspiracy could do that. Meaning, you know, a lot of conspiracy people on the more negative end and all that is
fuck. I ain't watching no movies in Hollywood and shit like that.
Not even just that. Not even just that. Oh, they're NPCs, bro. They're fucking normies. Like, I ain't going. Like, I'm not talking to them. Or
that's
I'm
also not love and light.
Well, right, but I mean, I think the false light thing totally exists too. But like, you know, you need discrimination. You need to be discerning and see things as they really are to the best of your own ability, because at some point you have to realize that we do have subjective perception and all of that. But yeah, like these things that are carried on, like traditions or ideals or archetypes, right? Like you can look at archetypes, you can even throw, so you have politicians, you have sports people, you have conspiracy theorists, you have researchers, you have skeptics, you have scientists, like all that's archetypes, but there's a memory, right? And that's what morphic fields and resonance kind of proves, right? It's that there's a memory to these things. And especially when you have an area that's very concentrated in some sort of energy, like say Hollywood or Iraq and Iran, and there's been a lot of war over in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And that ley line connects to like New York City and Rome or whatever. And like there's like this energy that gets shared. And so, you know, are we just tapping into the memory of everything, the memory of our traditions, the memory of our mythologies and our theologies, the memory of events that have happened at certain parts of the earth, and that the earth's nervous system, aka this earth grid, this electromagnetic grid that's surrounding the earth, that this information is being kind of spread around. And then when we think of something as a deliberate ritual, which a lot of the times it could be, the point being is okay, there just seems to be a less of a focus on the natural occurrence of that magic that goes on. And I'm not saying magic like the occult. I'm saying the magical thing that happens where, oh my God, the synchronicity over in, you know, Turkey, and the fact that Hollywood did this thing because they happened at the same time and all that, that's a ritual. And I don't want to hear about anything beyond that. It's not a ritual. Where yet the more important thing is okay, well, if they did this ritual, and it's all symbolized all this shit that was going on, but ironically, it's actually matching what's going on in the sky. So did they do that? This was an astrologer that works for the Illuminati. Like, okay, on this date we have Uranus doing this and square this. So this is going to be a good day to do a ritual on that. And what that's going to do is it's going to send energy over to Turkey, and then that's probably going to kill about 50,000 people. So you want to get this one right. You know, and
anything Sam Smith is sitting around this wooden table with a bunch of hooded people, you know, planning this shit out. That's the shit that bugs me out. Where it's like, you really think that's happening? Like,
and it
you really
and
think
like
Sam
and it
Smith is sitting
could
there?
like and but the thing is right like but and it could be, but then that means if it is, then that means our enemy or they know something that
And
we
it's
don't,
all around us.
and it's all around us, and that means, so it's like, are you just going to sit there and point it out?
Mm-hmm.
This, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening. Or would you like to know where this is where I'm at? Is okay, let's say now, hypothetically, that is a ritual. And that ritual on that same ley line as Turkey causes the earthquake because some energy gets formed. It's some satanic, evil energy that brings upon death and certain things. There's a vibration and there's archetypes built into it. And that vortex of energy on that ley line completely transfers like a download into Turkey or upload into Turkey, and the earthquake happens. Let's say that's a real that's a thing, and I'm not being like facetious or trying to be a jerk off. Like I'm saying hypothetically that I'm going to consider it. How?
Mm-hmm.
That's how. How did that? So, okay, I believe you. I'm on your side. The conspiracy's true. The ritual. How? Oh well,
Yeah.
that the energy and it's like there's too much. It's too misty for me. There's too much like or foggy. Like it's like I get the whole concept. I get the conspiracy part of it. I get that what you're trying to say, and I can even see how that would work in my imagination to a certain extent. But I still can't give some sort of definitive proof or enough to say, okay, this is going to benefit me because I know how it works and I know what was like, okay, they're doing it. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
How are we going to
You
go
can't.
about it? Is there something we could do from the knowledge they know doing these rituals
Yeah.
that we could do that would actually turn over the frequency of the earth itself and kind of get it more going in the more of in our direction of
Yeah.
progression and evolution and getting the power out of the hands of men in suits and dark elites or reptilians or Anunnaki or whatever. And we could, and that's the thing, right? Like I can mention all these names of what they are, and then that could be, I could go waste a whole year or two of my life going to argue with people about what narrative is true on behind that too. And that's the thing, right? Like that's where we're at. This isn't getting anywhere. But knowing that if they did do this thing and it caused this thing over here, well, okay, you pointed it out. And then you're making some speculation, but there's still no definitive thing. But we're just gonna, okay, on to the next conspiracy. On to the, oh, okay, we didn't figure out how they did it or what they were trying to like and how it worked. But now let's talk about a balloon on an eclipse, or let's talk about that. Like it's, but we're not getting anywhere. Like you're just going to go to the next
Yeah.
story and say, okay, so maybe it is all happening. That's, that's where,
Can't just point out date, times, and locations of things
and numbers.
and numbers and how they're connecting and stuff like that. Like very much so. Just the fact that there are, and I mean, whether you want to go into the reptilian alien side of things and Anunnaki and stuff like that, Nephilim and stuff, sure, fine, whatever. But I'm saying though, yes, there is a possibility that there is somebody within these circles that does obviously have the same understanding that a lot of these channels and people like us and stuff like that, and they have this understanding of maybe some of the occult knowledge and esoteric stuff that they can work their way into the public sphere and stuff. But to think that it's so deliberate in the sense that it's like that actively being done to the point where it's just like, yeah, well, they're just doing it. Like, no, it's not. Like it's something that's just also organically happening too. Like I think very much so it's organically. And my constant question is like, where I kind of question of this possibility is just like, is it the fact that there is parts of the universal consciousness that we constantly say that it's embedded with archetypes and everything, that it's like these archetypes try to peer out and need and they almost like need a host, and this is what makes spirit invocation and possession
Egregores.
egregores very very valid and a possible thing, is that it's like almost like that they're trying to resurface and they find susceptible a host to use, or occasions to come about and implant themselves to be invocated and stuff to kind of form an outcome. And yes, it may be something very distorted and what we call demonic or something like that. But also, I mentioned it in the last episode where like Nietzsche had that idea where it was like, what if there was like survival of the fittest when it came to the logos, the law of the universe, the laws of the universe, and only certain laws made it and the others have been suppressed. And it's like, what if a lot of those laws that have been suppressed, so to say, try to find cracks and surfaces and ways through consciousness and the universal field and all that stuff, and try to find their way to slip through it, tries to find its way to slip through the cracks, to invoke itself, to kind of manifest itself in that way. Like energy is trying to, because energy can't be created or destroyed, it could only be replicated in that sort of sense. So it finds things to attach itself to in order to replicate and bring itself back to irrelevance. And it's like, what if that shit's happening? And you could see that potentially happening with some of these occasions that seem like rituals and stuff in these significant locations at these significant times through these significant groups and stuff like that. And like earth energy ley lines, like when you really look at them and you come to understand what they are, that they're natural yin and yang energies emanating from the earth that move in random directions and curves, but often connect with ancient sites and stuff like that. Like it's almost like the earth has chakras, just like our body has these energy points and these nadis and stuff like that. Like, so what's to say, because we don't really fully know what the fuck the earth is, and we do know that the earth harnesses many different types of energetic forces and stuff like that. So it's like, since we, with what we know and what we don't know, we should be able to have a composite of knowledge together to be like, wow, like there is a potential for something to be trying to emanate itself or trying to find a way to attach itself to make itself bigger. And this doesn't mean just in a bad sense either. Like I think that's what creates the balance, is like, it's like we always want to focus on the bad, right? We've said it before in way older episodes about the teacher being up in front of the classroom putting up fucking 9 times 0 through 10, and the one of the equations has the wrong answer and the rest have the right, but the whole class will point out that's wrong, and only focus on the one, because that's the distortion in our own humanity, is that we become so heavily focused on wanting to point out the wrong for our own egoic gratification, or even just maybe something else and stuff too. But we don't realize the good and the light that's working too on top of it to keep things in a more of a balance, to allow us to have everyday life, to just be able to go to work, to come home to our kids and our family and our pets and this, and enjoy a good meal, like the simple necessities that we deal with in everyday life. So when we balance that out and understand maybe something like this when it comes to potentials of these forces and this morphic resonance, how it works in all these different types of ways, and that it goes beyond just the people and the elite and stuff like that. It's just the fact that consciousness, every human person and consciousness as a whole, is a receiver to all this shit. And our tuning is so fucked up. But if we can kind of learn, instead of just giving into whatever narrative to tune into, and learn how to just kind of have our own alternative tuning and alteric currents in a sort of sense, then maybe we can start to function in a sense where we take this information in, that we actually learn from it as more so of an energetic understanding, and actually have a way to apply it to our energy and how we take things in when it comes to energy, and how we transmit energy and stuff like that. Like there's so much more that can be gone into with this.
Wow. Yeah. That was perfectly. I mean, that's basically it, right? It's like, and I said it before, like the awareness of things is step one, right? But and that's fine, and we're actually still kind of doing that with all this stuff. It's like we're bringing the awareness, but then it's moving beyond it to use it and to see like, hey, don't give those other things the power. These there's some forces in place here that we just need to learn how they work, and that's to me that's the superpower that they have. It's just that they have knowledge and the ability to know how things are working. And
Yes,
because
that's
they
definitely
have that,
available.
well, and because they have that, and I have egregore up on the screen, and I'm going to read off of that. But then, so, but and this is my point with this. As you were saying it, it popped in my head to give two examples. You know, you get one that's a little more scientific esque, I guess, still both conceptual, and then this right on what's on screen now with egregore is more of the supernatural, conceptual, occult approach to it, but they're the same idea. And then they actually kind of funnel into what morphic resonance seems to be, right? And the thing is, so why would be the awareness of this be important? Well, if you're feeding these things, then you're the whole game changes at that point because now you know what did you say before when we were talking when you were saying about groups of people, even like family lines, you know, they talk about like bloodlines.
Hmm.
Well, Rupert
Yeah,
Sheldrake has definitely emphasized ancestry to have morphic resonance.
yeah.
Or when I'm about to go over what egregore is again, and we'll go into pendulum. But like, let's say their archetype is playing out. Let's say they are evil, you know, quote unquote. That with morphic resonance, instead of just claiming the DNA is controlling everything, that's why understanding that is important. The epigenetics, Bruce Lipton, that you are affected by your environment and the things outside of you and then how that changes your DNA. Well, the thing is you are also resonating with certain things and certain people in your environment, and especially with your family and your ancestry. So I think even like the groups of people that have been doing it for so long and they've had this long plotted plan that they're going to take over the world, and it could, yeah, like, you know, I remember I'm never like discrediting it, but I'm just saying this is the other option here that, and maybe it's a mixed bag. Maybe there is the mixed bag of there is deliberate power hungry douchebags that know this shit and they're doing it deliberate, and that's it. But then there's the natural evolution of consciousness, and we have the astrological influences, and we have the environmental influences, and we have the memory built into the ley line system of the earth. So it's like almost like it's like these neural networks of the earth that are holding these memories, and then because we're like antennas that we rebroadcast them too. So we're rebroadcasting the earth memories, we're rebroadcasting the ancestral memories, we're rebroadcasting astrological imprints that it's left during transits in the past and all of that. And then on top of that, now we have conceptual kind of builds saying, okay, so with these energetic broadcasts and influences that are affecting the way people act, talk, think, their consciousness, then conceptualize it just like they conceptualize God and Jesus and all that in the things that we can relate to and have an image of and say, oh, it's kind of like an egregore. Oh, it's kind of like a pendulum. And I was going to read off this, but anything you have to add like that, that's basically what I'm getting from it. Like we're both
Yeah.
kind of saying the same thing a little bit.
No, absolutely, because that plays exactly into what I was saying. And like, here's the other thing too, like that we'll come out and say too, like we're saying egregores, and we talked about desensitization. Don't allow the term to desensitize what it is that comes with the construct of even a word like egregore and stuff like that too. Like, allow yourself to, deeply inherit what that even means and stuff too, like, and use actual examples from your own life that could get personal. And like, yeah, like maybe you don't know exactly if that applies or not, but try to see if you can find egregores in your own life, and things that maybe you have attached to or people around you have attached to. But other than that, the other thing that I was going to say was that when it comes to like, like we become so consumed with, wanting to say that, oh, that's what it was, that we always want to give this sort of overpower to what people call the elites or the government or the controllers or whatever type of name that people give it. And it's like, do you really think that these, whatever they are that much above unity consciousness, that they're that much above the creator, that they have that much control to allow us to just be like, yeah, like
There are people, well,
they can manipulate, they could hit or miss too, then if that's the
right,
case.
right. Well, and they are people. And then on top of that,
Yeah. They
and
have to play by the same rules, if
yeah.
anything.
And because they know the rules and they know how the game works, that they're
Mm-hmm.
winning the game. And it would probably be more on our side to say, okay, well, they figured out the game. So now we have to. And now in the
Yeah.
age of information, it is kind of there in front.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything that we would need to know is already in front of us
Mm-hmm.
on the internet. Like you can find it, but you have to have that level of discernment and you have to have that discipline to not fall into narratives too much
Yeah.
because that just doesn't really lead anywhere other than depression or anger or whatever. And I get it. Like, I think people woke up before other people. And I hate using woke or awake. I get that. But like, more so, the awareness kind of grew in certain people. And there's certain people that have been on the path. But, and I think there are stages, right? There are certain people that are going to like wake up and then they're going to go through the phase of like they did, it's the cabal, and then like, and we need those people. Like it's fine, but like it's a phase. And I'm saying, and Gio is also saying that once you've kind of went beyond it and you get kind of sick of it, and you realize that it doesn't really do much other than it has a threshold and it has a ceiling to it, and then you realize, okay, well now I understand that there are things happening. I can't really fully decipher what's inorganic or what's organic, but I at least have actually accept in my mind that there is universal mind and synchronicity, and then there could be deliberate ritual, dark, occulted synchronicity as well, and it could be, and that's fine. But it's the ability to have that discernment to say, okay, this has served me for only so long. Now let me go into seeing how they work, how things are happening, what are possibilities, what are potentials, opposed to they did it and they're screwing us.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And my thing that I just kind of want to like, we're a little over an hour in, and I just want to like on my side just kind of like reiterate something, make sure that I get this in, is just the sense that when we're talking about energy ley lines, because it's real easy to go and do the research now if you want to do the research and go look at the energy ley lines. But something that I'm learning too is that a lot of these ley lines and energy ley lines is only a very small fraction of the set up energy that's there, right? That's already there on a planet, so to say, that we don't actually really know what we're on. So we can't definitively say how exactly it's set up. We have an idea about it and stuff. But not only that, we also don't know what type of energy is being emanated towards us. Say something like artillery currents or something like that, which is the alternating electric and magnetic currents that are from the Earth's magnetic field that are strengthened at sunrise or weaken at sunset, and they often form into spirals. And those are often recorded and noted. But like the same thing, like the sun's solar flares and stuff. So we have those other things to take in consideration too. And then we've obviously talked many times about astrology, and so basically it's almost like these energy grids and stuff like that, they may move or they may be afflicted in certain ways at certain times and stuff like that. So this is why it's like it's better not to fall into the definitive of that stuff either, but to understand more so of how energy can work. Because then if you can note maybe more so the sense of time of when something's happening, or what kind of emanations kind of going off, and maybe where you stand, then you can kind of, with the understanding of energy itself, then maybe kind of grasp what is actually happening and kind of put more of an archetypal understanding to that energy force and maybe what may occur within that and stuff. um but but also the other thing that I want to, well, which we'll go into deeper eventually and stuff too, but I want to just give a brief thing, is because we talked about, these ley lines and things happening on them, and a lot of ancient sites, like you have Gobekli Tepe, the pyramids, all the different pyramids of the world, first of all, the Bermuda Triangle, let's see, all the different obelisks, the Georgia Guidestones. You've had Stonehenge. Let's just name them. You can name them all, right? All the different types of major cathedrals that people go into when they talk about Tartaria and stuff like that. What we're saying too, and how I'm looking at this, is that all these types of structural integrations with what we're saying with energy and morphic fields, it can there's this ability to understand it, that they can better harness or project the energy contained or that's being resonated with the use of stuff like steeples, bronze, other metallic fixtures in the top that give negative and positive ionic transfer in the ether, and specific lines running through the ground for grounding this energy and stuff. Like, for example, a lot of old time, even 15th, 16th century type of cathedrals that were built, we're starting to find that they're very oddly placed when it comes to even just how their corridors are angled and where the altar sits. We're starting to find that there's some sort of magnetic presence when you go to it, and that they run from certain directions, north to south, and the altar necessarily has more of this, what do you call it, dowsing rods, right? The
Mm-hmm.
dowsing rods, when they do them, that they tend to they all tend to point and form and have this magnetic connection to this one setting, and it always ends up being towards the altar and stuff. And not only that, the steeples all tend to be a certain shape, certain dimension, metal with bronze type of fixtures that have a ball, and then always down the side of these buildings tends to be like this metal cord that runs into the ground. So you could really look into those things too. And we do know, in a scientific sense, that the ether in the ground does release positive and negative ions, or even our bodies release negative ions and stuff in that sort of sense. So there is an exchange of a natural electromagnetic energy and stuff. And it's like, were they doing this to power the, free energy and stuff? And this connects a lot of the Tesla shit and stuff. And was this more potent because they were running it on ley lines and stuff? You see a lot of cathedrals through Europe and stuff that run from France and Spain and stuff, and more so Northeast Europe, the European nations and everything over there. But not only that, then there's also specific type of stones like granite and quartz that were used in the building of certain things, like the pyramids, even a lot of courtrooms, that they're lined with this certain Georgia granite and stuff, and granite and quartz has been known to be a great conductor of energy that may carry its own sort of specific resonance, which may be a sort of justice, balance beam scale type thing. I mean, think about it, using in a courtroom and stuff, and trying to harmonize with the earth in a sort of sense. Yes, you have limestone too, but there's a lot within those chambers of the pyramids that has quartz and things. And a lot of people think that there was a different type of thing, a different type of stone cap on top of the pyramids, which, yes, it's all speculation, but these are things to look into, and we'll go further into those things. um the other thing is that we see is when we look into a lot of these cathedrals and stuff, is these stained glass windows and it's almost like they act as like these filters of light coming in and creating like these geometrical patterns, and with the lights and the shape and the colors too, which the colors range on the frequency scale and stuff too. And we know that vibration is within, that sound and color can be measured in the same breath, and it is a vibration, and this creates form. And it's even said in the Bible that, and with the words make worlds. So it's almost like they have their own like unique effect and a code within of whatever they're kind of bringing in. And imagine what that plays in when those people walk into those buildings and they see those colors and those patterns on the ground, or even when they hit their retinas and the back of their brains, and like it's just being received to their mind, what type of effect that may possibly have. And then you have the shapes of the buildings and the domes and the atriums that capture and project sound in a specific way that resonate with the body, along with like the different types of bells and organs that are played in these church type places and stuff like that. And then as far as like more of these stone structures, like Göbekli Tepe and stuff like that, we see that more in the archaeoastronomy way and stuff, that it's like they're almost projecting, I mean, they're almost like intaking light through certain dimensions in certain ways and lining up with different types of astrological alignments in a certain sense, that who knows what happens when you position yourself in those places at those specific times, what type of effect it may have on yourself, especially with the type of material that was used within those stones. Like I said, granite, limestone, quartz, all those different types of things. So it's like, these are the things I think we need to take in consideration, that maybe if we did understand how energy worked in that way and how these materials worked in that way, then we could even understand how we could even use that in our own homes, in our own gardens, in our own whatever necklaces, which would, there's people doing those things already, but
yeah,
it's very cliche.
well, and it's right, cliche.
Mhm.
And that goes with, it's funny because you're talking about earth stuff, and then I immediately, my Gemini ass goes right to the mind and communication and people and all that. I'm thinking, yeah, everything that you just said is basically the earthy version of dealing with people and communication and social spheres, where that's more of like the um necessity, basic needs sphere, or like where we're building our houses,
Mm-hmm.
how we're growing our food, how the energy is working on the earth and how it's working with us, and that's, and I had egregore up on there, but even that, like the energy is being transferred, not only because I think we're like walking, not monoliths, what would be the word? But like we're like what Stonehenge is and what the cathedrals are. I think we're like these conductors that conduct the same way. I feel like with like that tree of life feature that they have and all that, I think
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of that, those cathedrals and a lot of these places are built with that same, doesn't have to be the same exact geometry, but it is the same exact build into some sort. And
Mm-hmm.
it's to harness the energy, where yet I think we're given some God-given meat suit that's not just a meat suit, because we're a spirit and we have that ability to tap into those same energies as well. So that's where it all plays in together. And then, so once again, the overarching story ends up being, well, how does it all work? Or how does the energy work? Or what's going on in the ether? Because then this whole area here bridges the group consciousness, ley lines, architecture on certain points of those ley lines, and the nodes, with the social sphere, egregores, pendulums, astrology, its effect on that, and the whole morphic resonance. Why that ends up being a core thing is because the whole non-locality of it, the quantum entanglement of it, where like you don't need space for these things to be connected and to affect one another. So who knows? Maybe one, say with the ancient stuff in the cathedrals or like the pyramids, one group or culture puts it on a ley line, and then all of a sudden that pyramid energy and that intelligence and wisdom gets transferred, and maybe that's how the people in South America and the Mayans or whatever was first, because I'm not great with
Mm-hmm.
that stuff, that energy is being thrown over, and all of a sudden the shaman's fucking drinking his ayahuasca or taking his mushrooms, and he's like, I saw how to magnetically build this pyramid through whatever, and that energy was just being transferred over from the other pyramid. That's these are the possibilities here. This is just speculation, but that's how you get to you know. To me, speculating on stuff is the practice of logic and creative thinking. It's holistic thinking. I'm going to speculate on this because I'm going to try and use my logic, but then I'm going to be creative. A lot of people out there who speculate, they just think with that logic. They just go off there, they go in between their bookends. But all of this opens up the creative side because now, if you've been listening and you've been thinking about what we're saying and actually using the creative brain, it's probably firing off because that's what happens in these talks with us too. We'll say before the podcast, we're going to talk about this. And then all of a sudden, creative thought, and we allow that to just to go. And all of a sudden, the speculation turns into the wheels start turning. You
Yeah.
know? And you see the engine's running, but
That's more
no one's behind
natural.
the wheel. Sorry, Ace Ventura.
But
Would you
that's
like
more
would you
it's
like a cookie, son?
I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah. Dan
It's
Marino can die of gonorrhea and burn in hell. Would you like a cookie, son? Oh, what do you know? The little footballs. Anyway, sorry.
it's more it's just more when you allow your mind to go to those places in that sense and stop falling on these definitives, especially when it comes to something like rituals and energy and dark cabal and the elites and stuff like that, like it allows you to maybe more so allow that psychic natural attempt to tap into, say, what people call the akashic wrecker, and actually have legitimate downloads and not these artificial type of dopamine hits that we were just constantly keep saying and stuff like,
Or pendulum based
yeah, okay,
downloads
yes.
too. See what I
Mhm.
mean? That's what I mean. Like once you've like, oh yeah, I watched that one podcast, and then like you're on there with 1,000 people all the time, and there's so much energy and so much like, yeah, fucking fight the machine, fight they, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're like just influenced by that, and before the end of the episode, which I think call it soon because I got to get up tomorrow. Um, make your point too, but the thing is like,
Mhm.
yeah, like people are tapping into that too. Like they're not just tapping into like they're affected by something they don't realize they're affected by, and I think that
Mhm.
brings the awareness because we know how consciousness and energy work together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the only other little like key interesting thing that I think to leave off with on my side at least is that with everything I just said too, that it's like, you know, which I don't fall heavily on his work too much, but I think he does have his contribution to things, is Graham Hancock. He had like a theory that especially a lot of people that work with earth grids and energy and ley lines and stuff and geometric patterns, like he had a theory of longitudinal distribution of a lot of these sacred sites and how they were based upon processional numbers, and that these numbers that they're basically encoded into the precession of the equinox, which is the 25, approximately
Yeah, a great year.
25,950 980 year cycle. And these are all harmonic numbers, such as 72, 144, 108, all those types of numbers that we constantly always see repeated. And the gematria people will go crazy if you repeat those numbers. But he also found not only did that the sites, were they related to longitudinally from Giza, but they all were harmonic distances and harmonic degrees apart. He also accidentally found that they were based upon pentagonal geometry. The numbers of the precession are the internal angles of the pentagon. And that's suggesting that the precession of the equinoxes is directly related to the sacred geometry, or your pentagons are, and possibly, even the dodecahedral geometries. So it's like almost like that we have this grasp of understanding that all forms, we know this too, that all forms in the material world are encoded in some way, shape, or form with the platonic solids. And if you don't really know so much about the platonic solids, then do you have any suggestions of where to go to figure it out? I can't even remember that one video that I pulled
There
up a
was a
long time
YouTube. Well, it
ago.
was on Leak Project. There was a guy named Aquarius Rising.
Yes, that's
That
right.
was the
That's right.
YouTube channel. That was
I
his
think
own.
that's a good one. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
encompasses so much. So if you could
Aquarius
find
Rising
that,
in all caps, and it's a guy who talked about the Platonic
yeah,
solids. I think in
learn
quantum theory.
exactly. So learn about the platonic solids, because then what you'll understand is that literally all forms in our material world are encoded in some way with platonic solids, and therefore we can take that. This is how we get earth energy ley lines: is we can overlay the platonic solid shapes over the earth, and it gives us an energy grid where we start to find that many of the significant ancient sites, holy places, or even megalithic structures are built, and that they're built on or around or even at the center point of these joining of these lines and everything. And we've also come to a point in our knowledge and history that when we look at platonic solids and stuff, that we also can compare them to cymatics in, the different memory shapes of that have been intent that's been put into water, something like that, with emotions, let's just say.
Hmm.
And therefore we can kind of start seeing this resonance of maybe a memory that's being put into place and stuff, and where we can sorry, the cat's attacking me right now. um we can start to see maybe what's connected now with these places. Does it really match up with those platonic shapes that we're seeing in that sort of sense? Now we can connect it even to the planetary structures. Like, does that make an effect now and show us that the astrology and those transits and those types of patterns, that they're actually having an effect now, and that they're showing us something when it comes to the energy onto the earth when they're projected? That makes you want, if you start seeing those connections, and it makes you want to look at your chart a little bit more and be like, oh shit, what possibly can this be showing for me in the energies? And it's not that it's definitive. We said it, in the last episode, not the last episode, but a few episodes ago, was that, you know predestined free will is the choice of whatever you choose in the different types of uh possibilities within the story that you're given. It's like you're playing that video game, you're playing Red Dead Redemption or something like that, and all of a sudden it's telling you, it's like, how you respond to the lady is, you you just kill her, you shoot her, you fucking, tell her that you're going to go search the house, or you're going to just ride away. Like, you have that choice. That's your free will. But the storyline is already played out in multiple different dimensions in some sort of way.
Right.
You just have to choose what frequency you go on.
Well, I think, and I'll just say it to the listeners. I have to get up in 5 hours, so I'm gonna. I
Yes.
think so. Next week, um, I don't know just yet. I would like to finally just cap this off next week, and I'm leaving this as a reminder for myself and in anticipation for you guys. Is with the ley lines and with everything that goes on with how energy works with consciousness, finally just kind of capping off with the concepts of really breaking down to the bone of what egregores, what's possible with the idea of an egregore, finally what a pendulum is within the transurfing, if you do not know what that is already, and talking about maybe mass formation one last time, and to finally kind of cap this off on just hopefully what you've gotten from these talks so far is the fact that energy and consciousness do work together in ways that we probably are not aware of, a lot of us. And now that science is starting to hit new peaks in different areas that are not mainstream or conventional whatsoever, and would break the current paradigm in half, that stuff's actually out there, and that you can go find all of that. That the ideas that Geo's portraying with ley lines and ancient sites and rituals and ceremonies being done on these things is not crazy anymore. It is absolutely possible. Same thing when it comes to group consciousness and mass formation, it is absolutely possible because we are starting to figure out that our consciousness is affected by the energy and by the environment, and it's vice versa. And lastly, one of my favorite things is now this makes astrology even more possible. Now we're starting to get into some sort of area where it's not just about, oh well, I believe it works and it's a superstition. And the fact that we can go to things like Carl Jung and the collective unconscious. We could go into all the concepts I just named, uh, and the sciences now are connecting to it. It's exciting. It's exciting to know. It just makes me feel like, oh wow, is the Earth a big circuit board and the energy is being just kind of pushed around and transferred, and we're these little like particles on it that are help sharing the information, and things are all kind of interconnected in some form, and that we do have that half of like that free will's there, but you also are influenced, and you do have some sort of set purpose in a way, and it's actually the set purpose, and this is more philosophical, was actually what you decided before you came here. So regardless of what the
Mm.
philosophy is and all of that, it's all a possibility. So I'm gonna cap that off there, but I'll let you have the final words,
Mm.
and yeah, that's
No,
it.
perfectly said. So a lot more to unpack here. We'll get into deeper things and we'll discuss kind of which way we're gonna take this, like you just said. So yeah, thanks for being here. Make sure you like and subscribe as usual. We just said that we'll be working on the site a little bit. Uh
Monday.
well, by the time this comes out to you,
Well,
we'll
my,
be already working on it, and hopefully we'll have more updates for you when it comes to that. But yeah, definitely keep helping us out. We appreciate the support. We allows us to do more. Like and subscribe. Yeah, let's get this out there. Let's change the way we think.
yep, it's not what you think, but how you think. Till next
Exactly.
time, guys.